Okay, we're up to Daf, I believe it's Pei Amid Aleph. Yeah, so the top of the Amid, but just let me review what the Gemara is talking about. We're mamish up to the top of the Amid, Amrav Papa, but just to review, the Gemara had brought down a machlokes in a few places in Shas between Rav Eliezer and the Rabbanon regarding the status of a koi. A koi, at this point in the Gemara, these Tanaim assume that a koi is a mixture between a goat and a deer, so it's a half chai, a half behema. So we said that there are three different halachic ramifications. It affects oisay ves benai, which only applies to behemas and achayas. It's a machlokes of Eliezer the Rabbanon whether it applies to oisay ves benai. It applies to manas kahuna, which also only applies to behema and achayas. Again, a machlokes of Eliezer the Rabbanon. And by kisi adam, which is the opposite, which only applies to chayas, not behema. Again, also a machlokes in Rav Eliezer and the Rabbanon. So we said that both Rav Eliezer and the Rabbanon agree as follows. They both agree that obviously the mother's genealogy affects the paternity for sure. The machlokes, and they both agree that we're choishish in l'zera'av, which means that they're both unsure whether the father is considered chelek at all. Meaning, let's say you have a situation where the mother's a goat and the father's a deer, so this baby is for sure part goat. There's no shaila. Unclear whether it's 100% goat and partially and no deer at all, or it's 50-50 goat deer. Unclear. That's both a suffix between Rav Eliezer and the Rabbanon. So what's the machlokes if they both agree to everything I've said so far? The machlokes is whether sev afilu mikzas aseh, which means that when the Torah says a specific type of animal, let's say a seh, like let's say matnas guna applies to a behema, applies to a seh. What if it's only part seh? Does the halacha still apply? That's a machlokes. Rav Eliezer holds that no, for an animal to be an animal, it has to be 100%. 50% is not enough. And the Rabbanan say, no, 50% is something. And that will affect all the machlokes. So now the Gemara will just speak out what each case is and the arguments between Rav Eliezer and Rabbanan by each case. The Gemara says, Amra Papa, Hilkach. Now that you have this background, Lina Kisei Adam Umatanis, regarding Kisei Adam, right, covering up the blood, which we talked about on Yom Tif, you're only allowed to shech the behema or a chaya if it's clear. You're allowed to shech the behema on Yom Tif, and there's no Kisei Adam. You're allowed to shech the chaya on Yom Tif, and there is Kisei Adam. What you're not allowed to do is, according to the Rabbanan at least, is shech the suffix, where it's suffix Kisei Adam or not, because Kisei Adam, if it's not necessary, is touching dirt, which is muksa. So because it's a suffix, we tell you not to shecht. That machlokes of kisei adam and manas kahuna is dealing with the following case. The only case is bitzvi haba ala tayasha. It's where the animal, a koi, is produced by having the father being a deer and the mother being a goat. Okay, so that means that this baby is for sure half goat, for sure. But both the Rabbanan and Rav Eliezer and Rav Eliezer agree that we're not sure whether it's 100% goat and we're not chosh l'zera'av, or it's 50% goat, 50% deer. And what's the machlokes? And the machlokes is 50% enough? The Rabbanan say yes, 50% is enough. So because this baby, whose mother is a goat, it's for sure 50% a goat, so the Rabbanan would tell you not to do shchita on Yom Tif, because because we're not sure, it's for sure 50% a goat, and that's significant. Therefore, the options are, if we're choishin l'zera'av, it's 50-50, but it would require kris adam. If we're not choishin l'zera'av, then it's 100% a goat, and because we're not sure, don't shecht. Rav Eliezer disagrees, because Rav Eliezer holds that 50% is not enough in halacha. Sev afilu mikzas says nothing, and therefore, the Rav Eliezer would say like this: you should shecht it no matter what, because. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, just 1 second.
Recording stuck in progress.
Yeah, sorry. So the point is, but according to Rav Eliezer, who holds that 50% is not enough, he would tell you shechted. Why? Because it's for sure half a goat. The shaila is it also half a deer? But even if it is half a deer, you wouldn't be chayiv kisei adam according to Rav Eliezer, because Rav Eliezer holds 50% is not enough. So the Rabbanan who take 50% into account, so it's potentially 100% goat or 50% goat, 50% deer. There's a chance where it's 50% deer, which they would be machshiv, and therefore they would say you do have to do kisei adam. Rav Eliezer holds b'chlal there's no kisei adam. Save the manas kahuna. Manas kahuna only applies to behema. So the Rabbanan say like this: if it's for sure 50% a goat, the shaila is it 100% goat or 50% goat, 50% deer? So you give half manas kahuna. because it's for sure 50% goat. The second half is a mitzvah chalav araya. Rav Eliezer disagrees. Rav Eliezer holds that 50% is not enough. So because there's a chance it's 50% goat, 50% deer, in which case you're not chayav matnas kahuna. So because there's a chance, you don't have to give any manas kahuna. That would be the fundamental machlokes. The Gemara continues. What about oisay vesbenoi? So that it can apply either way. Bein b'taya shabal tzviya. It could apply, and the Gemara will speak this out, where the father is a goat and the mother is a deer, or bein b'tzvi habal tayasha, or vice versa, where the mother is a deer and the father is a goat. I'm sorry, the mother's a goat and the father's a deer. It could apply either way. The Gemara speaks it out. B'taya shabal tzviya. If the case is where the father is a goat and the mother's a deer, so then li'isura. The Rabbanan Savri Dilmer Choishin Lezera Av Seva Filusab Mexasav Rinav Aser Rav Eliezer Savar Nihi Nam the Choishin Lezera Av Seva Mizaloyam Rinav. The case is, if the case is where the father's a goat and the mother's a deer, so Oisei Bespina only applies to behema. So what? So the only way it could be aser is if this child is perceived as a goat. So if the mother's a deer, it's for sure 50% deer. There's no shayla. The question is it 100% deer or is it 50% deer, 50% goat? The Rabbanan say, well, 50% goat is significant. So because there's a chance that it's a half goat, so then Safek Daraisa, you shouldn't be allowed to shecht oisei vesbenoi. Rav Eliezer disagrees because Rav Eliezer says it's only significant if it's 100%. So what's the options here? It's either 100%. Again, the options are it's for sure 50% deer. It's either 100% deer or it's 50-50. Where Rav Eliezer says either way, there's no problem with oisei vesbenoi. If it's 100% deer, it's for sure not oisei vesbenoi. And even if it's 50% deer, 50% goat, 50% goat is not enough. The Gemara continues. That's how it could be if it's that iteration where the mother's a deer, the father's a goat. But it could also apply the opposite. You could have the same achloikes if the mother's a goat and the father's a deer. B'tzvi abatiyasha ulamalkus. Rabbanan Savri nehi nami. Let me speak it out. The case is you could have a machloikes where the mother's a goat and the father's a deer. Now, if the mother's a goat, it's for sure 50% goat. There's no shiloh. The options are it's 100% goat or it's 50-50. So everyone would agree you're not allowed to shecht it. I'll tell you why. Even Rav Eliezer, who's the most lenient, would say, what are the options here? The options are 100% goat, in which case it's an asa deraisa, or it's 50-50. So because there's a chance where it's asa deraisa, safa deraisa l'chumra. So everyone agrees you're not allowed to shecht it. The Rabbanan would tell you it's definitively asa. Rav Eliezer would say it's a safek deraisa. Either way, you can't do it. The machloikis would be, do you get malchus? Rabbanan would say you get malchus. I'll tell you why. What are the choices? It's either 50% goat, 50% deer, or 100% goat. Either way, you're going to get malchus. If it's 100% goat, you for sure get malchus. And if it's 50% deer, 50% goat, well, they consider 50% goat enough. So you're going to get malchus either way. Rav Eliezer would say, no, you don't get malchus. Because what are the options are 100% goat, which you get malchus, or 50% goat, 50% deer, which Rav Eliezer would say is mutter. So because there's a chance that it's mutter, you're not going to get malchus. That's Rasafik. But it will be also deraisa to do it because safek deraisa l'chumra. So the Gemara speaks there. Rabban and Savrin he nami the chashin lezer av seva filu mixes samrinon umalkin aleo. Rav Eliezer savar isura ika malchus leka isura ika dem chashin lezer av. Haisam al yuhu malchus leka dem chashin lezer av mixes samrinon. So that would be the machloikes and the iteration of the machloikes between these two tanaim in all these cases. Rabbi Yehuda. Now, till now, we've been going with the presumption that a koi is a 50% goat, 50% deer. It's a half behema, half chaya. The Gemara says the truth is, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with these tanoim, and he says, koi birya b'fnei atzmei. A koi is not a crossbreed of behema chaya. It's a new breed. It's a bria b'fnei atzmei. It's a complete different bria, and therefore, all these halachas don't apply. This whole halachas are presumption that it's a crossbreed, and then the question is, do you go by the father, do you go by the mother? He says, it's a complete independent creature, and Chazal are unsure whether it's a behema chaya. So it's not a crossbreed. It's a separate animal. It's just we're not sure whether it's behema or chaya. Rav Nachman Omar, he has a fourth opinion that koi is a ayil habar. Koi is actually a wild ram, so it's 100% a chaya. Okay, so you have all these different opinions. Kitanoim, the truth is, there's a brisa that has tanoim that say all these opinions. The brisa begins, koil is a ayil habar, koil is a wild ram. That's the opinion of Rabbi Nachman. And some say that it's a combination goat and deer that we had yesterday. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi says no, a koi is actually a new independent bria. And Chazal were unsure whether it's a behema or chaya. Rav Gamliel Omer min behema here. And Rav Gamliel says, no, I disagree with all this. I think it's a behema, 100% a behema. And the house of Dushar, they used to raise many herds of these behemoths. Okay. Now, the Gemara says there's another animal. It's a bit of a shaila of what it is of a chaya or behema, and that is these forest goats. Amr of Zera, Amr of Safar, Amr of Amruna. Haniazi de Balo. These animals that are known as the forest goat, Kasheris Gamizbeach, the Kashal Gamizbeach, meaning they're a behema. They're a behema. They're not a chaya, they're a behema, and therefore the Kashal Gamizbeach. Now, they definitely split hooves and chew his cut. It's for sure a kosher animal. It's just the shaila is it a minor chaya min behema? He's saying it's a behema. Savar lo ki hadam Rav Yitzchak. He holds like the following brisa that was taught in the name of Rav Yitzchak. Eser behemas mana kasa v'sulai. The pasuk lists 10 behemas. The pasuk says zois ha behema asher techelu. It's the pasuk in Devarim. It says these are the animals you should eat. So I'll just read the pasuk. Shar, se, kvasim. Right? Ox, sheep, and goat. Now, those are behemas. Then the pasuk lists shar, se, kvasim, and se'izim. That's an ox, a sheep, and a goat. Okay. Then the pasuk now lists chayas. It says ayil, tzvi, v'yachmar, the heart, the deer, the yachmar, akoy, disha, and v'tov, v'zemer. The akah, the disha, and the toe, and the zemer. So it lists 7 chayas. So it says the Gemara, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, there are only 10 kosher species listed in this pasuk. V'hani, and regarding these forest goats, because they're not listed in the chayas, they must be included in the goat family that is part of the behemoths. Meaning, if they were part of the chayas, they would be listed, because the behemoths cover all sheep, all goats, and all oxen, and all cows. So that's pretty inclusive. Then the pasuk lists 7 chayas, but those are specific creatures, and because the forest goat is not listed amongst the 7 chayas, it's a behema, and it's encompassed in the goat family. Masker Rabbi Yaakov says, well, you tell me it's behema ayil v'tzvi prat. Why don't you say that when it lists the chayas, it says ayil and tzvi, which are a prat. Then the pasuk says kol behema, which is a klal. So prat uklal, anytime you have a prat and then a klal, nasa klal moisif ala prat, the klal is moisif on the prat, ikatuva. And maybe it should include much more chayas, meaning when the pasuk listed those chayas, if you go with the rules of prat and klal, then you could actually include much more chayas that are listed in the pasuk. So maybe it's taka a chaya, and it's just not listed in the pasuk because the pasuk actually means to indicate more chayas that are listed. So it says the Gemara, im kain kol hani prat olamli. If the pasuk meant to include more chayas, then it wouldn't have listed all 7. It would have listed 2. And then you would have done a pratu klal, and then you would be done. The fact that the Torah lists 7 indicates that it's 7 vesulai. Okay. So Rav Yitzchak feels that these animals, these wild goats, forest goats, are taka behemoths, because they're not listed as the chayas. Well, the chayas, when I listed the chayas, I just listed words. I don't know what they are. The article doesn't know what they are either. So it says the Gemara, maybe the forest goats are called the aku. Aku are one of the chayas, and maybe the forest goat is that animal. So maybe it is a chaya, and it's one of the 7 listed. Another Ashayla. Amr Ravacha the Rav Ravashi, Amr Ravacha the Ravavi Ravashi, Dilma Mina de Toe, Mina de Zemer, or maybe it's the Toe Chaya or the Zemer Chaya. In other words, there are many Chayas listed that we don't know what they are, so maybe the forest goat is one of them. And the truth is, there was an Amira who taka held that it was a Chaya. Amr Rav Chan Ravashi, Amemar Shari Tabayu, Amemar held that you could eat the chaylev of the forest goat, and you could only eat chaylev of a Chaya. Meaning, although we said before that there were Amiroyim, that Rav Hamnuna felt that it's a behema, because not listed by the chayas. Amemer actually felt the opposite. He actually felt that it was a chaya, and it's one of the 7 listed. So the Gemara says a similar discussion. Boy minei Abba Bereder of Minyumi Barchia, Merav Huna Barchia, Hani Azizabaloy, these forest goats that we were talking about, Mal the Gamizbech, are they kosher as a carbon? I mean, before we said that Rav Hamnuna says they are, in this version it's a shayla. Are they kosher? Meaning, are they behema or chai? Samarlei, well, Ad Kamlei Pliger of Yosi V'Rabban Ul B'Shar Habar. We know this Machlekes Tanoim is what is the status of a Shar Habar, a wild ox? Meaning, because oxen are behemas, but wild animals are chayas. What about a wild ox? Ditnan, Shar Habar min behemahu. Rav Yosi ever min chay. It's machlekes Rabban and Rav Yosi. Rabban and Savri. Why do the Rabban feel that a wild ox is a min behema? Mitamarginon tarbula, because a forest ox is translated in Aramaic tarbula, Mina de behema ninu. That implies a behema, because tarbula is the combination of tar and bala, a forest ox. So therefore, if it's called an ox, that means it's a behema. Rabbi Yossi says no. So, in other words, that the Rabbanan feel that it's the word ta'u in the pasuk. Now, the word ta'u, they're saying, translates as a combination of tar bala, which is a wild ox. So ox is behema. Rav Yossi then responds, yeah, but where is the word ta'u in the pasuk? The word ta'u is the second to last. That's in the category of chayas. The pasuk starts off by shar, sek, vasam, sa'izim. Those are the behemoths. Then it goes into the chayas. Ayel, tzvi, yachmar, akudishan, uto. So if you're telling me the ta'u is a reference to this wild ox, it's in the part of the pasuk that's dealing with chayas, so it must be it's a chayah. So says the Gemara, the whole machlekes tanoim is by a wild ox, but what about a forest goat? Everyone agrees it's a goat, and therefore it's a behema. Now we're going to have the same version we had before. How do you know it's a behema? Maybe it's part of the pasuk. Maybe it's the aqua in the pasuk, which is a chaya. And again, it's a chaya. And the truth is, Amemar actually ate the chaylev of these forest goats because he held that it's a chaya. Okay. Now the Mishnah. This is going to take us into, I think, most of the rest of the daf. The Mishnah then listed 12 different situations. The Mishnah listed about Oisei Vesbenoi, how it applies to Chullin and Karbonis. And it listed 12 different cases. Some cases where you have a Chullin inside the Azara and outside the Azara. Kachim inside the Azara, Kachim outside. Kachim in, Kachim out, Chullin in, and then Kachim out, all these iterations. And we talked about how sometimes you be over Malchus, sometimes not over Malchus. Says the Gemara, Amr Rav Oishia, Kulam Asisin Rav Shimon. Our entire mission is not like Rav Shimon. Why? You'll see Rav Shimon's shita is that a shchita she'en a roi lo yishma shchita. That a shchita that is not matar achila is not a biblically recognized shchita. Now, we're going to prove, there's about 4 examples of our Mishnah that they do not hold like that. Because according to Rav Shimon, if it's not a shchita haroi, then it's nothing. Then it's not considered a real shchita. And we'll see there's 4 cases that indicate our Mishnah like that. Midiktani, because let's say one of the cases of the Mishnah is where the animal and its parent are kachim b'chutz, are both karbanos, and they're both shechted outside. So we said, Harishan chayiv kares, the first animal that you shecht outside, because it's a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash, it's going to be chayiv kares. Ushneim sulam. But they're both going to be puzzle. Ushneim seifik and sabam, and you get lashes for both. The first one you get, again, karis, because you brought a carbon outside of the mizbeach. The second one, there was not chayiv karis. Why is it not chayiv karis? It's a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash. The answer is, so when I did the Mishnah, yesterday I told you, the reason why it's not chayiv karis is because once you shech the mother, so you can't shech the child anyway, right? Because it's oisei vesbenoi. So because the child is not roi l'shchita, then it's not considered a bring a carbon outside of its proper space. Or you can't shech the mother and the child in the same day anyway. So the second you shech the mother and it's a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash, so the mother is going to be chayiv kares for bringing a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash. But the child, even though it's also a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash, but it's not roy hakrava. You can't bring it today anyway, so it's not roy l'shchita. So because it's not roy l'hakrava, you're only chayiv kares for bringing a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash when it could be brought inside the Beis HaMikdash. But this one can't be brought either way. Now, says the Gemara Michti. Now let us see. Shamil Rav Shimon de Amar. Now we know Rav Shimon's shita throughout Shas is shchita in a shurur lo yishma shchita. That if you shecht and it's not a kosher shchita, it's like it didn't happen. You'll be punished, but it's not something the Torah recognizes. So go to the next page. So if that's the case, kama miktal katle. Now according to that, what's the reason why the second carbon is not chayiv karis? It's a carbon outside the Beis HaMikdash. You'll say, because I can't bring it. Why can't I bring it? Because I brought the mother. And Oisei Vesbenoi prohibits now the second one, so it's not Roy Lakrava. But if you believe that Shchita She'ena Roy Lo Yishma Shchita, that means that when you shechted the mother, it was not, because you brought it outside of the Beis HaMikdash, it was not a kosher shchita. If it's not a kosher shchita, then it's like it didn't happen. If it didn't happen, then the child should be able to be brought that day. Kama miktal katle. Then we look at the mother being shechted because there's a carbon brought outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so because it wasn't a kosher shechita, because it was the wrong location, it's as if it was just shot in the head without a shechita. Then sheni miskav b'fnimu. Then if that's the case, then the child should be able to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. Kares nami l'chayiv. Then it should be considered chayiv kares. I mean, the only reason why it's not chayiv kares for the child is because it's not roi la'akrava. The only reason why it's not roi la'akrava because its mother was shechted that day. But if you don't recognize a kosher shechita, if a shechita is in a roi la'ishma shechita, if a shechita that is not recognized is not considered a shechita, then it's as if the mother was not shechted in that day. In which case, you should be able to bring the mother. You should be able to bring the child, because then the child is now considered roy again. Hold on 1 second.
Recording in progress.
Now the mother, you'll get chayiv kares, even though Rishimon holds shchita and a reloish mashchitas. You'll say, why have chayiv kares for bringing a carbon outside of English? It's exeris hakasiv, but it's as if it didn't happen. If it's as if it didn't happen, then why is the child considered not a roy la'akrava? It's only not roy la'akrava because his mother was shechted, but if we don't recognize the mother's shchita, then the child is now roy la'akrava. So now it's a carbon that's brought outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and it should also be chayiv kares. That's first example. The truth is this, the Gemara is going to bring this 4 of them. There's 4 examples. The second example, Chullin b'fnim. If both animals are Chullin and they're both brought inside the Beis Hamikdash, which is not where it's supposed to be brought, Shneim Sulim, they're both invalid because they're both brought in a place that they should not be. And the second one is Chayav for Isai Vesbenoi. Now, Mechti, Shemin the Rishim Davar Shchita Shen Lo Shchita. So if you hold like Rav Shimon, that shchita shenaroy is not recognized, then kama mikta kotli. Then the first one, because it's chulin brought in the wrong location, it's not considered a kosher shchita, and therefore, if it's not a kosher shchita, it's as if it didn't happen. Then it's not oisay vesbenoi. Oisay vesbenoi is only where the parent was killed and then the mother's killed, the child is killed in the same day. But if we don't recognize the killing of the parent, then it should not be asid to kill the child as well. It shows you that oisay vesbenoi is not just a matter of them both being killed in one day. It has to be that we recognize the death of both of them in one day. So the second one should not be chayav oisay vesbenoi. A third example of how our Mishnah is not like Rav Shimon. Kotshim b'fnim. If both of them are karbanos and they're brought inside. Now this is a chiddush. The truth is, Rav Shimon, because he holds that shchita shenaroy lo yishma shchita, what does that mean? It means that if a shchita does not matter achila, it's not a kosher shchita. The truth is, that's usually used when there's a shchita that's prohibited. But if you think about it, every time you shecht a carbon, it should actually be a shchita shenaroy lo yishma shchita. Meaning, Rav Shimon Taka holds a tremendous chiddush that every time you shecht a carbon, even properly, in the right location, done with the right kavanas, etc., are you able to eat the carbon at that moment? The answer is no, you need the zrika. So that means that technically every shchita of a carbon is not really matar achila, so it's actually not called a shchita. Now, it's the Torah. Obviously, it's what you're supposed to do. It's the process, but it's not an actual shchita. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, then if you shech both karbanos inside, then you should not be chayav for osav esbenoy on the second one, because the first shchita is also not a shchita that's called shchita. I mean, according to Rav Shimon, for a shchita to be called shchita, it has to be matar achila. That means every carbon is not really a shchita. So you say, well, what is it? It's the Torah telling you to do this process, but it's not a shchita. So it says the Gemara, kachim b'finim, harishan kasher upater. The second one gets Oisay Vesbenoi. Michti. Shaminon. Shaminon, Leila Rav Shimon. Alright, done. Damar Shchita Shener Eloishma Shchita. Rav Shimon's Shchita is that if a Shchita is not Matar Achila, it's not called a Shchita. And the truth is, Shchita is common. Kachim Nami Shchita Shener Roi. The Kamal Loizarik Dam Lemishtari Basar. Every Shchita of a carbon is not really called a Shchita. It's a tremendous chiddush. So if that's the case, so why is the second one going to get lashes? It's Oisay Vesbenoi, but it's not. There was no shchita. So you see, all these 3 examples show you that our mission is not like Rav Shimon. So the Gemara says, Pshita d'hachiyasa. Once you have the first proof, why do you have to keep going with 3 more proofs? I get it. Our mission is not like Rav Shimon. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why you had to list all the proofs. This last one is a chiddush. This last one is a tremendous chiddush to tell you that even a shchita of a carbon that's done properly, because it's not matar achila until the zrika, it's not called a shchita. That was the chiddush that we wanted to point out. We could have stopped after the first, but we wanted to go through the whole process to explain that chiddush. Shchitas kachim mitzterchalei sol katay tchamin shchitas kachim shchita roihi. You might think that when you shech the carbon, it's considered a proper shchita. Neither Shimon daha inacher v'zarek dam lemishtari basa. Because I'll prove it to you. If you were to take a gun and shoot the animal in the head, it would not be a kosher carbon. So you obviously see that a shchita is necessary. So you might think that it's considered a shchita in halacha. The chishacha mishtari basa shchita roihi. Kamash Malo, no, that is not considered a kosher shechita in the eyes of Rav Shimon. Hold on 1 second.
Recording in progress.
Just to finish up, the Gemara has a question. In our Mishnah, it listed lashes. So let's go with one of the cases when both the parent and the child are karbanos, and they're shechted inside the azar. Right. So the first one is brought properly, perfect. The second one is going to get lashes for Isai Vesbenai. Let me ask you a question. The second one should get lashes for two things. First of all, Isai Vesbenai, and also it's called Mechus Zman. If you bring a carbon before it's eligible, let's say every animal is not eligible until it's 8 days old. So you take a 2-day-old fetus and you shecht it as a carbon. It's aser because it's Mechus Zman. It's not raw yet. It's missing time. The truth is, when you have a mother cow and a baby cow, and you shech the mother, and they're both karbanos, you shech the mother in the proper spot inside the Beis HaMikdash, and then you bring the second one, you shecht it, you should get 2 sets of lashes, one for Isai Vesbenai, but the second set of lashes for Mechus Zman. Because you shechted the mother that day, then that child is not royal hakravas hayoim. It cannot be brought today. It needs to wait 24 hours. So if it needs to wait 24 hours, it's akin to a child to bring a carbon before it's eligible time-wise, in which case you should get 2 sets of lashes, Isai Vesbenai and Mechus Zman. Says the Gemara, Tanya, how do I know that if you bring a carbon at the wrong time, it's lo yiratza? Tamalem b'shar seh suruv kalut. Limit al psulim shebashar v'seshu b'lo yiratza. If you bring a carbon at the wrong time, that is Hashem says it's lo yiratza. In which case you should get lashes for Isai Vesbenai and Mechus Zman. So the Gemara gives a first attempt. The Gemara says ki kachashav lav Isai Vesbenai lav nuchra lekachashav. Answer number 1 is you're right. You are going to get a lashes for Mechus Zman. Why is it not listed in the Mishnah? The Mishnah is only listing lashes for Isai Vesbenai. So the fact that it's omitted doesn't mean you're not going to get it. Just that's not the focus of the Mishnah. Here's the problem. One of the cases in the Mishnah tells you that you're going to get lashes for kodshim, if you shecht a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you're going to get lashes for bringing a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash and for Isai Vesbenai. So you see that the pasuk does list. The Mishnah does list lashes for other Isurim. Says the Gemara, V'loi, the Mishnah did not list any lashes for other Isurim. In the case where you shechted the mother and the father, the mother and the child, both karbanos outside the Beis HaMikdash, lav nuchroinenu, that's not referring to the Isurim of Isai Vesbenai, it's referring to the Isur of kachem b'chutz. And what does the Mishnah say, Diktani? Kachem b'chutz, if the animal and its mother is shechted, both as karbanos outside of Beis HaMikdash, harishin chayv kares. The first one is chayv kares because it's brought as a carbon outside of Beis HaMikdash chayv kares. Ushneim sayvik zaboim, and both shechting for the mother and the child, both people who shech the mother and the person who shechs the child, both are going to get lashes. What are the 2 sets of lashes for? Again, Kayan A shechted outside of the Beis HaMikdash the mother, and Kayan B shechted the child outside of Beis HaMikdash. Both get lashes. Why does the second one gets lashes? Why does the first one get lashes? Because the kachem b'chutz. So you see that the Mishnah does list these lashes that are not Isai Vesbenai. Bishlam Hashem Shum Lav Isai Vesbenai. El Rishon Amai Soivik Lav Mishum Lav D'Shchut Echutz. So why is it that when you shechted the child that day of a carbon inside, it didn't list Mechus Zman? And don't tell me it's because we don't only list the Isai Vesbenai, but we listed the kachem b'chutz lashes. So why are you not listing the Mechus Zman lashes? So the Gemara says, "Kol hecha deleka lav da Isai Vesbenai chashav lav nechroi, v'kol hecha deika lav da Isai Vesbenai lo chashav lav nechroi." Answer number 1 is that we will only list lashes that are other than Isai Vesbenai on a different animal. In other words, in this case, you have the shechting the mother. That's the only lashes you're going to get is kachem b'chutz. Shechting the child, the only lashes you'll get is Isai Vesbenai, so we'll list it. But in the case of Mechus Zman, where you're shechting one animal and you want to get 2 sets of lashes for that one animal, one is Isai Vesbenai and a different set of lashes on the same animal, the Mishnah doesn't want to get into it. The Mishnah doesn't want to cause confusion. So the Mishnah will list lashes for other lashes on other Isurim if it's on a separate animal that is not getting Isai Vesbenai. But if it's an animal that gets Isai Vesbenai, the Mishnah does not want to list other lashes. That's answer number 1. Or we'll answer number 2 under this. Rav Zera Amar Hanach l'Mechus Zman. Rav Zera says the truth is the Mishnah would list other lashes. So why don't you get the lashes for Mechus Zman? Mechus Zman is different. Ta'kasuv nitkulasei. The Gemara says the truth is Mechus Zman, although there's a general lav of lo yiratza, the source of getting of Mechus Zman, it's not a lav. It's a lav haba mechlal aseh. The pasuk never says do not bring a carbon before its alleged time. The pasuk says bring a carbon when its time is up. There's an assay to bring a carbon at the right time, which you can deduce that if you bring it at the wrong time, then it's a lav. But that's called a lav haba mechlal assay, which is when a lav is deduced from an assay. It's not outright. It's based on a deduction. We don't give lashes for that. So the truth is there is a mechus zman, but there's no lashes for mechus zman in this case, because mechus zman is a lav haba mechlal assay. The Gemara says, the pasuk says from 8 days on, then it's eligible. Now you could imply that before 8 days it's not eligible. That's a deduction of a los assay, but it's not mafurish. A deduction from a los assay, you don't get lashes. So says the Gemara, wait a minute, we'll end off with this. You're telling me that the pasuk of Miyom Hashmini V'Lo Yerotzeh is the source of Mechus Zman, and it's an assay. I thought we used that pasuk for something else. Don't we use that pasuk? The Rabbi Patriki Rami Ksiv Haya Shivas Yom Tachasim. Rabbi Patriki said there's a contradiction. It says that an animal should be with its mother for 7 days, which implies, right, in Jewish law, the 8th day begins at night, the night of the 8th day, so the beginning of the 8th night. That implies the pasuk says a carbon cannot be brought during the first 7 days, which implies that at night it is roy. It's fit to be a carbon. But then the pasuk says from 8 days on. 8 days, not the night before. So Rabbi Tuki says what it means is like this. The night before, there's no karbanis brought at night anyway. What it means is the night before, you could make it a carbon. You could say officially this is a chatas. That you can do from the night before. And then the next morning is when it's roy lahakrava. So you see the pasuk is not extra to tell me that to deduce of a leisa say, I thought we need a pasuk to tell me that you could only make it bring it as a carbon from 8 days, not the night before. So it says the Gemara, ksiv krachirina. The truth is, Rabbi Triki got that from a different pasuk. It says, Kain tasel shachar b'tzeinecha. That pasuk is extra to tell me that it has to be brought on 8th day, and the night before is only roy to be makdish. Therefore, this pasuk is now extra. Yom Hashmini V'Lo Yerotzeh is extra to tell me to deduce that the time to bring a carbon is from 8 days on, which you could deduce before that is not the Ratzon of Hashem, but because it's a deduction of a los asay, you don't get lashes, and that's why it's not listed in the Mishnah. I will stop here. Pick it up tomorrow.